Hello dear learners, welcome again to yet another interesting series of lecture design on residential design. I welcome you all to this learning series, and the lecture number today is 5, and we will be discussing building bylaws in residential design, its need, framework and terminologies. I am Architect Mansha Samreen from School of Architecture and Design, K.R. Mangalam University, and I will delve you all today to the process of understanding the bylaws that are implemented in the residential design. So let's begin. We need to understand what is bylaws. So today we will be covering the need for building bylaws in residential design, definitions and objective of building bylaws, authorities involved in making of these bylaws and how it is enforced, applicability, necessity and scope of building bylaws. We will also discuss important terms and terminologies that you need to understand while working with bylaws for residential design specifically. So residential design is not just about aesthetics and function. It must also follow rules and regulations for safe and orderly development. Building codes and bylaws set minimum standard for structural safety, sanitation, light, ventilation and fire safety. This session will introduce you to the key concepts and terms so that integrate all these building bylaws into residential design from the very first sketch which you are going to make. So important terms that you need to understand are standards, norms, regulations, bylaws and law. Standards refers to the fixed and the established rule. Norms are authoritative standard and they are followed in a generic way. Regulations are a prescribed orders and are known to be followed by all the developers. Bylaws become the law of the local authority which has to be followed and is a mandate for all designs that you will be making. And law is the rule of that state and cannot be broken. Breaking a law is a punishable offence. So bylaws is also the law of the local authority which has to be followed by all design developments that you are going to make. So we need to integrate legal safety requirements from the very first sketch. So when we are starting with the design process, all the designers need to understand how to make and what to make. So the what part is the quantitative aspect of any design and it links directly to the building bylaws. And we have to align all our design and per se if we are talking about residential design to be specific, it has to follow the master plan, town planning policies, the local authority requirements and all this information you will be getting into the master plan of that particular area. For example, in Delhi, Master Plan 2024 is still into the process of working and the Delhi building bylaws give you the local data for which the design has to be compliant with. So, if no proper bylaws are implemented, then problems will arise. It will lead to irregular and narrow roads, frequent traffic problems, creation of noise and nuisances, problem in the development of services like water supply, drainage, telephone, fire and electricity, poor light and ventilation and lack of recreational facilities. So, in today's lecture, we will be discussing all these aspects, how these aspects impact the design and why we need to follow it and what are the exact values, what are the exact quantitative numbers that need to be followed along with the overall bylaws that are given by the authorities. So, when we start about talking of the bylaws, we need to understand first what is a building code. A building code is a document containing standardized requirement for the design and construction of most types of the building. The purpose of all these building code is to ensure public safety, health and welfare as affected by building construction. It includes structural strength, sanitary equipment, light, ventilation, fire safety and etc. So, the National Building Code is the single document in which the information contained in various Indian standards is woven into a pattern of continuity with independent requirements of sections carefully analyzed and fitted into to make the whole document a continuous one. It gives the preamble of all the laws that has to be followed with respect to the construction industry, and residential design come under this purview. So, we need to understand why we have to follow the building bylaws. So, a building bylaws is a local law framed by the local authority. The local authority knows and understands what is the requirement of the particular area, as it is working on it at a very micro and a grassroots level. It channelizes to achieve the concepts and policies outlined in the master plan of the city in order to give the particular architecture to the city. For example, Jaipur, the pink city, the building bylaws have made it mandatory for the heritage city of Jaipur to be painted in pink color to follow the particular architecture character of the city of the Jaipur. So, these bylaws are the law of local authority. Local authority will be depending upon what is the requirement of a particular area and has to be followed. So, students, when you are working with the bylaws, you need to understand what is the current context and what are the local bylaws. So, if the local bylaws are not available, you are going to refer to the model building bylaws given by the Government of India, and the National Building Code 2016 has to be followed. But all development which is done through proper way and channels have their own bylaws. So, Delhi will have their own building bylaws, Haryana will have their own building bylaws, Pune will have its own building bylaws. So, all the cities, either it is tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, every city have their own set of local building bylaws which have to be abided by all development, and residential development becomes the part of it. So, building bylaws by definition are defined as the standards and specifications designed to grant minimum safeguards to the workers during construction, to health and comfort of the users, and to provide enough safety to the public in general. The regulation sets out basic requirements to be observed in design and construction of the building. They are applied to new buildings, also to the extensions, materials, alterations, changes, and everywhere you need to make the change, the bylaws are important. So, we also need to understand who makes the bylaws. So, bylaws are made by the local authorities or the state government, and when the local authorities and the state government doesn't have the bylaws, you have to follow the modified building bylaws given by the Government of India or the National Building Code. So, these bylaws are framed by local town planning authorities such as DDA, BMC, etc. It lays down rules for building safety used during the construction and occupancy and post occupancy. The central government has framed the model building bylaws 2016 which needs to be abided, and when there is state bylaws or the city bylaws, that has to be followed in alliance with the model building bylaws. So, objectives of these bylaws are very basic and very simple. It makes it easier for designers and developers to pre-plan all the building activities. That means compliance to these bylaws are very important. It allows a disciplined and a systematic development. It gives guideline to the designing architect how much to make, what and where he has to put a curtailment in it. It prevents hazards and developments. It gives safety to the humans working or living in the building, and have the very important role of the safety aspects. It may be it a fire safety or any structural hazard or any failure of the structure that can happen, or noise, anything which can cause any problems to the building in future per se. Then we need to understand the zoning concept. So, every town and city is divided into different areas called zones. For example, Delhi itself is divided into 11 different zones and 30 districts. So, location of these zones depend on the suitability of specific activities, and these are all designed into the master plan. Local authorities decide how many number of zones are required considering the changes of the town requirement and so on. So, these zones keep on getting updated, and that is why different zoning plans are made by the authorities. So, types of major zones are classified into 5 major zones. They are residential, commercial, industrial, hazardous and educational. So, the residential zone is basically the residential building will be housed in it. There could be gardens, playgrounds, schools, offices are allowed, but industries, hospitals and wholesale markets are not allowed. So, only the activities pertaining to the residence or residential will be included in the residential zones. Commercial means anything which would earn you money. So, cinema, retail shops, town halls, restaurants, bank, offices, shopping centers are all allowed. But in commercial, residence will not be allowed, hospital and industry will be not allowed. Industry means is divided into two categories. Industry is one ordinary and second is hazardous industry. So, any light industries, workshops such as printing press, a small factory, any industry which does not create any hazardous output comes under industrial ordinary. And hazardous industry category is all type of industries which will make any hazardous output are categorized under hazardous waste. So, specifically in the hazardous industry, residential buildings are strictly not allowed. Then comes the educational zones. It will house the school, colleges, sports complex are allowed. Any other than educational activities will not be allowed in the educational zones. So, moving ahead, students focus on this picture. This picture shows a clear demarcation between two types of development. Look at the upper end of the picture. You can see there are tall buildings, you can see the plotted development, you can see proper roads, you can see high rises. So, these areas are designed as per the bylaws. And then look at the lower half of the picture. You can see blue overhangs are there, you can see there are no proper roads, there is no connectivity, there is no scope of light and ventilation. The overall development is in a very haphazard manner. So, that becomes a slum development. So, this picture shows you the basics how a developed area looks like and a not developed area looks like. So, these bylaws are very important. If bylaws are not being followed, it can give rise to a lot of problems which have been seen through multiple times, and it has been published, it has been documented. So, the authorities have a very important role in making sure that these bylaws are followed, and wherever required, these bylaws are updated and amended. So, as architects, you need to understand that the bylaws are basically the pre-planning of the building activity. It will allow orderly growth and prevent hazardous development. So, provisions of bylaws helps the development to have safety. It gives the hazardous and key hazards away, and it avoids any kind of structural failure. So, proper utilization of space has to be maintained so that efficiency is achieved in the overall space planning. They provide health and safety comfort to the people who live in the building, and due to these bylaws, each building will have proper approaches, light, air and ventilation. So, next we need to understand how and where these bylaws are applicable. So, students, all these bylaws are applicable to all the new construction. Any addition and alteration if you are making to the building, it will impact on that also. If the change in use of the building, for example, if the building, a residential building many a times is converted into a school or say a daycare center. So, in that case also the bylaws have to be applied and taken care of. And if any development of land is being done, then also building bylaws will have a role to play, and in any kind of demolition activity also bylaws have a very major role to be played. So, these bylaws are implemented on various aspects of the residential design. It will be manipulating, it will be impacting the site and the boundary of the building, the side boundary, what is the length, what is the breadth, building frontage line, its distance from the road, how much space has to be left, all these are written in the bylaws. For different purposes, different functions, what is the minimum plot size, because every function will have a certain decided plot size, and the plot size will also decide on the what is the limit of the construction. So, these impact on the both ways. The ground coverage, how much ground we can cover in a given plot, FAR, floor area ratio, which is also called the built up areas, the height of the building, the parking requirement, the basement, and the site services that can be provided onto the plot or the upcoming design. So, all these factors are very well clearly taken into the working and the implementation of bylaws. Without these checklists, without these basic pointers, the overall development will not be possible in a organized manner. So, these bylaws are implemented further into the residential designs through the provisions. So, these provisions are provisions for lift and staircase, for the vertical mobility also, for lighting, ventilation, for the services aspect such as water supply, sewage management, waste management, the power supply and the electrical supply and the overall electrical layout and design of the building, rainwater harvesting, and the overall waste management pre-construction, during construction and post-construction. So, these provisions are well taken care in all the bylaws. So, again, each area, each zone will have their own set of building bylaws, students. So, do not forget to refer to the local building bylaws when you are working on your specific design. So, bylaws are again forming a very basic foundation when you are starting with your design. So, if you remember our previous lectures, we have talked about basics to the design, where we discussed that design is a process, it is not a one day thing, and it will go through a number of processes. So, the first step is ideation, the second important step is to understand what is the requirement of your design. So, bylaws are something which give you the basis, a foundation to work upon and build upon the design process that you are going to proceed further during your whole design journey. So, residential design has their own set of bylaws. When you will refer to the bylaws, you will find there is a whole section on which the residential specifics are given in the bylaws. Depending upon that, you will have to decide what area you are working on and how much is the overall requirement of your design that you are working upon. So, the principles on which these bylaws are worked, that first each building is classified with each unit as a family and mentioning the requirements. So, each unit as a family means it is one household, one family is called one household. So, if we are working on a residential design, so overall plot has one family in it, then we calculate it as one household and all the requirements will be worked upon those household requirements. On that basis, rooms are classified according to the usage, depending, for example, for residential design, we have a specific room called bedroom, we have drawing room, we have living room, we have kitchen area, we have bath and toilet area, storage area, parking area, etc. So, depending upon the requirements of the family, the bylaws have their certain set of quantitative values. These values are specifying the minimum standards for the size of the room, the height of the room, the floor area of the room, the ventilation requirements, the lighting requirements, the services requirements. Every aspect will be covered depending upon what type of household and what is the number of household that would be in the one building set. It also specifies the setbacks, it specifies the plot margin, it specifies the minimum and maximum size of the plot and their dimensions. Dimensions meaning length and breadth. What is the overall geometry of the plot that you are going to work on. So, again these aspects are very clearly mentioned in the bylaws and has to be taken care of while you are designing the overall building for a residence or a home. So, for students you need to understand what is the household size, and depending on that household size you will be specifying the overall size of the plot, and depending upon the size of the plot, the bylaws would give you the numbers for setbacks, plot margin, and what is the overall width of the street will also impact the overall plot sizing also. So, that is again done by the planning aspect. So, let us understand what is the plot area. So, plot area simply means the total land area enclosed by a boundary. That is the jurisdiction in which you will be working, that this is the plot and in this you have to work and make the design. So, that is the land which is possessed by the client and offered to you for designing or consultancy services. So, this plot area in technical term is called site area. So, students please note, from here onwards we will be referring to plot area as the site area. There would be a lot of discussions on site area when we are going to discuss the site analysis in our next to next lecture. Another important point after the plot area is the building line. It is the line up to which the plinth of a building adjoining a street may be lawfully extended. The building line may change from time to time as decided by the authority. So, that is the line where you stop your construction exceeding to. So, that line has to be maintained, and this would be further be converting into the setbacks. So, there are certain do's and don'ts when we are working with the building line. If you see in the figure 1, the building blocks are abutting very clearly to the street provided. In the second image, you can see that the building is encroaching upon the street. So, no portion of any building shall project beyond the required line of any street, road or a gully. Gully is the local term in Hindi that we use for narrower roads. So, building line is the line beyond which you cannot extend your construction work. Your development cannot encroach upon the road that is being given. It is the right of way, ROW, and has to be followed by every development. Many people make steps, ramps which encroach upon the road. That is not correct, that is illegal and has to be taken care when designing. Another aspect of building line is that projections of the chhajjas. So, the chhajja projection which comes on the floor above. So, any kind of projection will not cover the road or the street, it has to be free from that. So, movement of the pedestrians will be ensured only by the proper construction of boundary wall, and chhajjas has to be within side boundary, which comes as a part of the building line. So, moving ahead, the building line converts into setbacks. These are the lines up to which we can extend our construction. Setback is basically the distance to be left from the plot, boundary or the road. Roads can be widened due to the presence of setbacks, resulting in better condition of air, light and ventilation, but the setback has to be taken care of. So, the setback or the margins, there are 3 types of setbacks that we have to work upon. So, these are the margins. First is the front setback, which is the side boundary that we talked about, the margin in which we cannot extend above beyond the road. Second, the front margin is the space provided from the roadside edge of the building unit. The side margin are the space that provide from the sides to the building unit, and rear margin are the space that is provided at the rear of the building unit. So, these 3 has to be taken care of when we are working on the side boundaries. So, we will take this details further in the quantitative aspect of the next lecture of building bylaws in the design when we will discuss our next lecture. But today's key takeaways are that building bylaws are local legal tools for safety, health and comfort. We cannot ignore them. We need to understand what is plot area, building line, setbacks and margin, what is controllable buildable versus open areas, and architects must balance creativity with compliance to create safe and healthy homes. So, students, thank you for your time today. We hope to meet you in our next lecture on the quantitative aspect of the building bylaws and the quantitative controls. Thank you so much.